So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Discover the SDGs to Power the Decade of Action event. The event is co-hosted by the Conscious Fashion Campaign in collaboration with the United Nations Office of Partnerships. And I have the honor to welcome you to the panel conversation on building a better future for all. My name is Lucie Brigham. I'm a Chief of Office of the United Nations Office of Partnerships, and I'm very privileged to have three distinguished panelists with me today. We have with us Sara Maino, we have Gertjan Meijer and Adrian Nyman, and yes, hello everyone. And we will be talking about the impact of this very unprecedented year that brought so many disruption to the global community, to the fashion industry. And we will look at some of the leading examples of innovation and creative thinking, what the industry has done in reaction to what we have seen happening this year. And most importantly, where do we see opportunities for collaboration and action to really leverage this unprecedented situation and use the Sustainable Development Goals as a platform, as a framework for recovery, and figuring out how we can shift the fashion industry towards more sustainable, conscious, and responsible path. With that, I would like to invite my colleagues and panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about their work and where they're coming from. And then we will jump into questions. Can I start with Sara, please?
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm actually Deputy Director of Italian Vogue, Head of Vogue Talent, and also I'm an International Brand Ambassador for the Milan Fashion Chamber. I've been working in the industry for the past 25 years, and mainly, won't stay here to explain everything, but mainly my focus in the last, would say 10 to 15 years is to support the new generation of creatives. And my aim in the last 5 years is to make more awareness and consciousness in the industry to be more responsible. So this is actually a broad example of my job right now.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sara. Can I go to Gertjan?
Yeah, so I represent Arch & Hook. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Arch & Hook. We started about 5 years ago. My background and also our founder's background is in retail design and retail fixtures, really. But we saw that there are a lot of hangers in this world, in especially our world, retail fashion world. And we also realized that there were a lot of opportunities to make this world more sustainable. And we pride ourselves in connecting basically design and sustainability in the development of our product lines. And we really hope to advise and consult our customers towards a more sustainable future.
Yeah. Thank you, Gertjan, and I really look forward to hearing from you through our conversation. And now, can I please invite Adrian? Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Adrian Nyman, and I formerly led Nike's global retail division. So that was all the stores we built, as well as all the marketing messaging and storytelling that went into them. A big part of that in recent years has been, not only can we be more sustainable in the way we make, but can we be more sustainable in the products that we bring into the stores, as well as the seasonal storytelling to communicate them. So it's been a big priority for Nike in the last few years that we've been leading.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. You have such a vast background, and we look forward to hearing from you, sharing some of the stories and ideas and vision where should we be heading. So number one question, and I think we all agree that the ongoing pandemic has caused this unprecedented and really strong disruption to the fashion industry and retail sector as well. And there is a need or recognized need for a shift or change to sustainable practices, and fully understood that higher calls or more intense calls for a change of the status quo. And my question to you is, what do you think? Where do you think are biggest opportunities of change within your respective areas of expertise? And how can we bring about the most impact? And I will start with maybe Gertjan. Can you kick it off, please?
Sure, sure. So, well, I mentioned it already. We're the sustainable hanger brand. Sustainability is at the core of what we do. It's really our mission statement. The past, I want to say year, it's a small year, but it feels like multiple years actually, has been challenging for sustainability, obviously. I think a lot of companies, and we focus mainly on retailers, brands within the fashion industry, but also the hospitality industry, are in survival mode rather, and focusing on protecting their people. So there's this tremendous mountain of PPE waste, coming into play. Now, I think sustainability in the short term, or at the moment, maybe a little bit in trouble, but it's also really put people that they're thinking caps on again into what is our next, what is our future, what is the future in our industry. And I think sustainability is the theme across the board there. And so I think there's great opportunity to rethink existing processes, rethink the status quo, and focus on new systems. One problem that we see in our market is the garment on hanger problem, which is hangers that travel from factories to the retail markets. And we try to work with our clients, with our partners on changing the whole system around that hanger, and also focusing on hangers that will last more than one time. So really getting rid of the single-use plastics that have dominated this industry quite a bit.
Actually, Gertjan, I would like to mention that when I met you for the first time, I think it was about a year ago, maybe a little more than that.
I was different.
Yeah, it was a very different world, but there is something that stayed the same, and that's the amount, the statistics, right? And I got astonished when I learned from the conversation with you we had for the first time, how many plastic hangers are actually being disposed every year and not recycled. Like, can you please share some of the statistics with us?
Yeah, so actually when we spoke, we derived our information from some articles that were written about the fashion industry, and we tried to sort of find all that data, but there was not much written about it, to be very honest. We had sort of an understanding. What we've done this year is, because we believe that, it starts with research and transparency, et cetera, et cetera. So we performed a research in the UK market, and it's our plan to expand that into other markets as well, to understand what is really the magnitude of this problem, right? So we know now that within the UK market, just shy of 1 billion plastic hangers are put into service each year, which is just in one country. Think about that. That's crazy. But the big problem is that only a small portion of those hangers are kept into service. The great majority is thrown out. So we know that 82% of the companies that work with plastic hangers say that sustainability is an important factor, but 15% doesn't know what happens with the hangers after use. We also know that close to 150 million plastic hangers in the UK are only used for the transportation of goods. So these are thrown out altogether in any case every year. And we also talk to our customers, and we get stunning information sometimes in terms of the breakage they have around their hangers. So we try to gather that information. That report has just been released. It's a completely independent report. We just have the data at our disposal to share. But it's really intended for us to understand, but also for the industry, our clients, to understand what the situation is, and together we need to work on new solutions.
Excellent, thank you. And I would like to clearly, based on what you said, and also understanding the sector a bit, there is a shift among the consumers, right? People start thinking, people have been affected by what has been going on, and they start thinking, well, how do I how do I make a change? How do I drive the change by my actions and decisions? And engagement with consumers has been a really important way of shifting the education and building the knowledge within the industry, both on the production and brand and consumption side, and really help people understand what is going on, what is behind, what is the story of the product. And the transparency, the authenticity, the data, and communication with customers is so key. I know that both, Adrian has got a strong experience with that, and Sara understands how to leverage the fashion network and really communicate the stories. So perhaps, can I go to Adrian and say, like, what do you think we can do? How best can we engage consumers to really help us make the shift to sustainability, especially in this time?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And here, I think, just jumping back to the very first thing you said about, hey, the pandemic is reframing the world, right? We're thinking about the world, I think, in ways where it's going to help sustainability, because I think people can't view the world without having a connected thought. What happens in one part of the world happens in another in a very connected way. And that's a huge plus for pushing our sustainable agenda forward, because we can't just treat sustainability in isolation. So I think when we think about the relationship between consumer expectation and what brands or companies deliver, that's a very connected relationship, and they kind of, one leads the other. I think what we really have to learn is that sustainability is no longer a nice to have or a marketing story or a smoke and mirrors for the consumer to have a false idea about a brand. You really have to make and drive noticeable, impactable change. And every brand has a different relationship to sustainability. If we talk about the role that I play within retail experiences, we think about that in two parts. One part is, how do we build more sustainably, much like the hangers? How do we find a way to have a closed loop methodology around building using recycled materials, thinking about flat packing and transit times, thinking about proximity from factory to store. There's a whole ecosystem, not just recycled material, that drives the end footprint. The second part is, how do we create experiences that change rapidly? If you think about the seasonal storytelling, that space has been far less, I think consumers have been less critical of those activations and those moments as being sustainable than maybe the bigger architectural moves that brands make. So we're really thinking about, hey, how can we do more pop-up? How can we be more flexible and agile and reuse things? And we're not just building out an initiative and then throwing it in the trash in 45 days. I'm being extreme, we don't do that. But as an example, it's really thinking through a much more efficient, a kit of parts. And can we build that kit of parts through recycled materials? Can we build it closer to its end use? And can we engage the consumer in that process in a way that's authentic? And we're not just trying to market to them that we're so sustainable or that we're doing all these great things. It really has to start with the company internally, and the company has to be able to say, we're going to commit to this in our own authentic way. So in relationship to Nike, we've taken a giant initiative around regrinding shoes. So taking all the cast off product from our supply chain, people buy shoes and throw them away. We recollect those shoes, grind them into regrind, and then we reconstitute that regrind into store fixtures, into sport courts, into different applications. But it's a closed loop around one of our biggest waste outputs. So for Nike, that's a great way of doing it. It would probably be different for other industries, but as an example, that's one way we're thinking about kind of closing the loop on one of our biggest impacts. Make sense?
Absolutely. And Gertjan.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Adrian. So I know firsthand how important sustainability is to Nike, and I know about all those initiatives, and I know about
Sure.
the convened project as well, which is really, really cool. So we feel like we're a B2B company, right? So we feel like we need to gather data and we need to educate people. So I'm curious for a brand as Nike, I know a lot of this is really like an intrinsic desire to have sustainable practices, but how important is that consumer? How demanding is your consumer around sustainability? Is that a real audience for you with the projects you develop?
Yeah, and it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of engagement, and it's a spectrum of, like I said earlier, like sometimes brands lead the conversation, sometimes the consumer leads the brand. So if you think about, there's really basic fundamental things like, hey, is this building LEED certified? Then there's things like, hey, we're taking our most coveted footwear product engine, the shoes that people will line up in, buy and resell on the open market, the shoes that people care most about. And we're actually saying, instead of that being a reissue retro Jordan shoe or other high heat shoe, we're actually going to take that and we're going to make it a sustainable shoe. We just did a lot of work around Move to Zero and this project called Space Hippie, where we made our lead product in the company that typically would be reserved for more of a sneaker culture space. We said, actually, no, this is going to be 100% sustainable shoe made from factory off-cut material, closed loop. And we're going to position that as the most important shoe to our sneaker culture. So it's using the companies across all dimensions. It's not just how we make a store or how we make a shoe. It's also taking the equity of the most coveted parts of our company and putting sustainable product on that stage and saying, this is the most important thing to us. And what we saw, which was very exciting, was we typically saw a consumer segment of younger consumers that haven't always been that driven by sustainability. The streetwear sneaker culture hasn't been a huge advocate of sustainability. They completely embraced that product. And it was almost like a gateway drug, I think, for people to start to understand that really cool sneakers, really cool cultural, elements that are driving things forward for trend and all those things are also good for the planet. And I don't know if we'd had those two things come together at the level that we did with that project. So it shows me that there's a future where it's in a holistic approach. It's just not one group making one thing. It's the whole company moving in tandem towards the goal of sustainability. And pretty soon we won't even say sustainability because it will be so ingrained in everything we do that it will be a non-issue, hopefully. That's my hope, is that it just becomes everyday practice. But we're not there yet, obviously.
Thank you, Gertjan and Adrian. All the good points. And I would like to go now to Sara. Sara, I would like to build on something or reflect on something that Adrian said, and it's that sustainability, it's just not a story, right? It's not one of the stories that come up from time to time. It's a trend, or it has to be a trend that is here to stay and that we use to engage. And it's not only this one-way engagement, right? It has to be dynamic conversation both ways that is relevant and interesting and fun. So I would like to hear from you. What have you seen within your field, right? You have a hand on a pulse of what people are reacting to, what the designers want to do, how do they want to engage. So what do you think, how do we communicate the sustainability? Is there really an appetite, growing appetite? Do people want to be empowered and really change the behavior?
There are a lot of topics in your question. I think that there have to be kind of like subdivided. I mean, if we need to speak about the new generations of creatives, they're obviously very, very sensible to be responsible because they're seeing and living on their skin and daily what's happening and I mean what we are all living, and the will of making changes is very strong. And obviously this is something that I've been seeing for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, and that right now probably this year has been like the year where, I mean, basically most of the creatives I've seen in their projects, they have a responsible way of seeing their project and their vision. Then actually there is then the second step, which is the most difficult one, which is how to put it in action, meaning that obviously all these creatives have the idea of wanting to do something, you know, responsible, and they're obviously acting to do so. But basically what I see, for who I'm saying probably that they don't have the tools or, you know, the background of how to reach this responsible way of doing, it's something that they're a little bit missing, because everything starts from education. So the basic thing about media by my side, which I don't find myself just as a media, but it's the fact of being totally responsible of creating awareness to customers and to the readers and to the new generation. Because the thing is that mostly everyone really wants to make a change, but in the end, they don't know how and how to do it. And basically, they're not used to it. I mean, because obviously here we're in a panel of people that have the tools, have the possibility, and in a way are willing to do it. But then we have to think, you know, outside of, you know, normal people, which do not have the slightest idea of what we're talking about. So we, as an industry of fashion, what I think we need to do, and it's still not enough, is communication, is to make it normal of communicating even small actions, daily actions of what's happening, or what Nike is doing, or what, you know, I mean, everyone is doing, because we are not used to it. I mean, people are not used to it, to hear it as a normal way of living. So this is really the great, I think, also the great challenge. Obviously, then there's the challenge of becoming responsible. But the thing is that what's I think, I mean, I'm gonna tell probably more the not negative aspect, but the most challenging aspects of what's happening right now, because I think that what we want to do, it's very clear. The challenging is, you know, the communication, and it's fundamental. I see it, I don't know, I mean, I'm in Milan right now, so I don't know everyone else where they are, but I see it already in TV advertising. In a year or so, I mean, nobody ever spoke of responsibility, of upcycling, or being more responsible. Now you see it in TV, which you didn't see it before. I mean, they were not talking about it. So something is changing, but I think it's very important. It's something that I always underline, that we cannot stop doing that. And unfortunately, fashion kind of gave the wrong meaning to sustainability. I mean, I don't use anymore the word sustainability, because right now it doesn't have a real meaning, because obviously it's being kind of overused right now. So it has to come back to its own meaning, because obviously Adrian and Gertjan know what they're talking about, but if you talk to someone else, I mean, sustainability, oh yeah, sustainability means that we're doing good to the ambience. Well, I mean, that's not enough. You have to know, you know, a little bit what's happening. And a person that I know made a very simple example. When you go to the groceries and you buy a new product and you don't know what you're buying, you turn around the label and see what's in the product. And the same thing has to happen for clothing. I mean, you need to know where it comes from. So this is something I really push for media to communicate. And this is also a very big responsibility brands. I mean, because that's very important also, that brands communicate as much as possible. And now it's not a critic, it's just something which I think it should be. I mean, brands, big brands, I'm not gonna say names, I mean, they cannot be responsible from one day to another. So there's gonna be that phase of middle, which is kind of doesn't make sense, because you say, oh, I'm doing a conscious or responsible collection upcycling, and then you have, you know, the other 80% which isn't, but you have to start somewhere. So I think this is also very important to communicate, because the people outside are not really so conscious of the big changes are happening. Everyone is yelling it, but then we have to put into action. So this is how I feel of being responsible as media. And this is, I think it's very, very important. And it's something that, I mean, you have to like do it every single day.
Yeah, media play such a key role in helping to get the message out and really engage and educate the audiences. You mentioned something very important, and it's the scale, right? In order for us to really to have an impact, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the agenda that UN has adopted, the vital principles of sustainability, we need to educate everyone everywhere. It's not just about Gertjan and Adrian and Sara talking about sustainability. We need to make sure that people really understand it. Not only understand it, but they need to know what it is and what to do. And not only that, we need to make it easier for them, because there's so much going on in everybody's lives, and they have, you know, it's a tough time for companies, for consumers to stay afloat and remain the hope and optimism. So instead of adding another layer of responsibility, I would like to think, you know, we should think more creatively on how to engage, how to make it easier for those we are trying to inspire for change, and really give them the tools and guidance and help them to really understand why this is important, why this is important to join us on this journey. And I know, Sara, you have been working you have a strong experience in working with young designers in young generation. Is there anything that specifically appeals, that you see that the young designers are interested in, anything related? How is their perspective of sustainability and engaging with this agenda?
Their perspective as designers and creatives is the fact of experimenting. I mean, they're happy to understand and experiment new ways of using, I mean, I'm saying designers, so fashion designers, so you're talking about textiles and how you can do, you know, a more responsible collection. So they're very curious to get to know startups or, you know, because I mean, young generation of startups which are trying to, you know, evolve textiles in a different way. So that's more the fact of experimenting, as they experiment when they're in their creative side. But the thing is that, as I was saying before, the challenge that they're finding is where to go exactly, where they can go and, you know, get the information. And obviously then there is a cost problem, but this is something I always tell them, yeah, probably to be more to be more responsible, it has more of a cost, but it's the beginning. When you are a designer and you begin a collection, I mean, the cost, the money is always the big issue. So I think they need to be kind of find, you know, not the easy way, but, you know, I want to be a responsible designer. It doesn't have to be difficult to become responsible. That's the action that you need to do. So this probably it's the most challenging aspect, and obviously also a little bit of know-how. But the know-how, as I said, it's also, and then I'll finish, it's in education. And I think that it's very frustrating knowing that most of the, I'm saying, fashion schools still do not have really 3-year courses in responsibility or master courses, which there are, but they're not enough. So this is something which is fundamental. Also going not just in university, even in school or middle school or even kindergarten, you know, it has to become very natural. As you studied history and geography, you know, it has to become kind of a daily way of interacting.
It has to become part of lifestyle. Sorry, Gertjan.
No, but I think what you said, it works on different levels, right? How to navigate the information, how to find your information. People don't know how, as you already indicated. And that applies to designers. It applies to consumers when they shop. It applies to retailers in our case, and brands when they shop for for the products that go into their stores. And we obviously we're a commercial company and we're here to sell a product, but we believe that we rather sell one product that outlives 5 other products. That's one thing. But the second thing is we also really want to bring people together and create thought leadership on what are different practices. So we have a sustainability salon series, which is a series of conversations with industry leaders, people that come from a lot of different backgrounds that have different ways of handling certain problems or challenges, and that exchange of ideas and experiences is, I think, extremely useful for the participants in the conversation, but it's especially also being able to gain access to those type of also like a conversation we're having today, right? We hope to inspire retailers, brands, or other companies alike, to gain more knowledge through these type of events and these type of conversations. And communication is like an ongoing thing. It cannot stop. I totally understand what you're saying.
Gertjan, you mentioned an important thing or issue, and it's creating the community of practice, right? By convening the workshops and the salons and events like this one, we are not only sharing the knowledge and hopefully inspiring others, but we are also creating a community. So people understand that there's so much going on and connecting the dots, right? We need to know, people need to know that there are options, there are solutions, and they don't need to start from the scratch. And on that, again, I would like to go back to my theme of scale. Great examples out there, Arch and Hook, Nike, doing amazing things. There are fantastic stories being told by Vogue and great curriculums developed by CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America. But all these things, they almost seem singular, right? They're working, but what we need to do is to connect them, make them part of the platform, and really reach the scale so we can have a bigger, more effective impact. And that's a question to Adrian and perhaps others. Like partnerships are in the core of the Sustainable Development Goals. And by working together, leveraging different expertise, resources, networks, knowledge, that's very important for the UN from the UN perspective. Like by working together, we can really have an impact and get where we need to be. So Adrian, what is your experience with partnerships and how do you see it?
It's such a great question. Thank you. I think when we need to think about partnerships in exactly what you just said, not in kind of a one size fits all. So it's very easy when we think sustainability to go to the big kind of material science bucket, which is like, okay, the Industrial Revolution basically started making all of these products a certain way, and now we've woken up 100 years later and said, that's not the right way we want to handle plastic. That's not the right way we want to handle certain materials that aren't great for the planet. So material science sustainable partners become a very expensive but very important piece of that puzzle. But that's a slow part of the industry to transform. When we think about partnership, we need to think about beyond the heavy industry, which is the slowest. We need to think about partnerships with things like, I'll use a few great examples that you can see across a spectrum of different brands, but it's really challenging consumerism and thinking about mend and repair, thinking about life cycle of products. So not everything has to be net new means of making, because that's a very expensive, very long horizon to reimagine the heavy manufacturing of some more damaging materials. But also thinking about partnerships through the lens of like, how do we bring in partners that can do refurbished ateliers, partners that can, so we're not just saying make it better, we're actually saying use what you have longer, and we're trying to create a spectrum of experiences that are more of a continuum that play at different places, because we have a behavioral issue as much as we do a manufacturing issue. And if we don't try to address the behavioral issue of people's idea of consumption, we'll just keep making more stuff and throwing it away. So I think it's a really important thing to think about partnerships through two lenses of making and extending. And brands can do that. There's external people who do that. But I think that there's a real kind of eye-opening moment for a lot of us on this call that have really acknowledged, like, you know, hey, I'd rather have something for 5 years than 5 things new every single year. You know what I mean? By replacing it every year. So there's just a real shift in thinking there that we as leaders of industry have to drive.
Yeah. Thank you. Any reactions to that, Gertjan, Sara?
Well, there's so much to say, right, about those things. So for me,
yeah.
yes. So for me, consumption, I think oftentimes equals convenience. I think consumers are really used to convenience, and I think the current current society or current developments almost have to teach us that in order to have a convenient lifestyle, maybe the services have to adjust to the way we consume versus replacement of elements. So you can go to an online store and buy a pair of shoes every week, but maybe you need to focus on a product that can last longer. And yeah, I mean, that's one part, but that's really on the consumer side, the B2C side. But yeah, you were talking about the partnerships, the importance of partnerships. You know, we really believe in research and development. So that's with our suppliers, our supplier base, in terms of what new materials are available, in terms of recycled materials. But the same applies to our relationship with our clients. If we don't understand their needs and their problems and their desires, it will be very hard for us to develop something that will fit for them. So we see that really as a partnership rather than a client-supplier relationship. Across the board, we need to collaborate on finding new patterns, thinking out of the box in terms of product development and the services that I just mentioned as well. And that's where the opportunity lies, to keep that conversation going.
Excellent. I like the thinking out of the box, reaching out to non-traditional partners to make it really interesting, perhaps not even within the industry, but looking to other spectrums, seeing how we can really change the narrative, the paradigm on how the people engage, work, produce, and buy. Sara, any interesting observations from examples of partnerships you have seen?
I mean, obviously, partnerships are fundamental, because I think it also is a very direct way also to spread the word and communicate it. Me having to do with many new generation of designers and creators, and putting them together, it's always nice to see how the young generation are not really so jealous about their own properties, and they're more willing to grow, and so they kind of exchange with each other. So it's about working together to do a better result. I mean, I was working, I supported these 2 young designers. They're both English. One, she does all upcycling and recycling of sneakers. So I don't know, maybe Adrian knows her or maybe not. She's Helen Kirkham, and she's been working a lot. And I gave her a price like 5 or 6 years ago. And then I invited Bethany Williams, that she does all social community work. And now they're working together for an accessory, and they're like in a panel for a prize. So this is something which is, it's not 2 big brands of as you say, of collaboration, but it's 2 new brands which are having success, and which are brands are getting interest, because now the big brands, obviously, I mean, we had the last 10 years capsule collections, special collaborations, whatever you want to give, which it's perfectly fine. But I think now also that way of doing things, it has really to change. And now I'm not gonna say names or anything, because it's not even fair. But like last week, a big group came out with a famous designer that has decided to create a group of young generation. And I don't know, I mean, the only thing that I didn't still read in the communication was, yeah, creativity, help and support, but there was still none kind of communication of being responsible. So the only thing I also tell, which I'm not saying that they're wrong, I don't know, because it's just started the project, but the only thing I think it's fundamental right now is that whether it's Nike or it's a young designer, if they decide to do something new, they have right now, it's more important than even yesterday to give really an important message and vision. And this is fundamental, especially if you're a very big brand. But even though you're not a very big brand, because going back to your first question about what has, this pandemic change, obviously it has changed everything. But I think that when there is challenging times, you have to get, also the positive part and try to think, for the future. And now the new generation has completely the power of really changing the rules, because now in fashion there's a very big mess, I think. And unfortunately, I'm always very positive in changes, but if they're not radically made, it's gonna be very easy not to go back exactly where we were, but it could happen. So this is it's something that cannot happen at all. Everyone says we don't want to, but really nobody's doing anything right now. I mean, everyone is talking, but then everyone is again talking about capsule, resort, we're doing this. So I think this is something that has, it really has to stop. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. I do understand the profit, but I think as you were smart to find a profit in one way, you can find it in the other way. So I think this is something fundamental, which I have to say that, and then I finish, in Italy, when there was, we were hit very hard as first country after China. And I remember that we went in lockdown immediately when everyone else wasn't in lockdown. And then when we were coming out from lockdown, there were countries that were going in lockdown. After 3 months, we were being in lockdown. Then summer came and nothing changed. Everyone went back to their own life. And now here we are again in deep problem, to not say anything else. And I'm confident on human beings, but not so confident. So I think it's very important that media as ours and brands, do as much as possible, because if not, human beings are very used to, now we're very used to stay at home, do not go out and not seeing people. But then human being, it gets adapted really easily. So we can also get adapted to go back, to what we had. I was someone that got 80 to 100 flights a year. I haven't been on a flight since 8 months.
So, we can attest to that, yes. We can all attest to that on this call, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you mentioned that people are creatures of habit, right? So what we need to do, we need to help have everyone develop a good habits, right? That's.
But humans get used to everything, in the positive or negative. In the end, it's the truth. It's not nice to say, especially in this moment, but we are getting used to it. And so if they reopen the doors and you say you can go out, I called the restaurant 2 days later and probably I cannot get a table for the next week. So it's.
Yeah. No, and I understand your fear. It's definitely something that we see with large corporations, especially, which are big ships that are not easily turned, right? And I really see that the focus on bottom line, obviously with what's happening today, there are a lot of companies just in real trouble. So the focus on the bottom line short term is super strong. Then, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, yeah, only 15% of the purchases around plastic hangers, have sustainability as their first priority. It's actually the money oftentimes that we see. So I think that's a challenge for those companies to really change their behavior. I see it changing, but it's a slow process for sure. Yeah.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. So on that, I would like to transition back to Adrian and ask him, looking forward, when we look at the 2021, what do you see? What is your vision, plans, thinking? Where do you think we are heading as an industry?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I think I think a silver lining of the pandemic is it's given us a world like we're in this together. And I think sustainability, I think, is being rethought as a something that can't be ignored. I think there's two things that we have to get right, which is there's the communication and the practice. And if we just make it all about communication, it will be small incremental changes that will become more marketing and less impactful to actually the real problem. If we make it practice and communication, and not all practice is something that warrants an ad campaign. It's almost better if you can reimagine your business from a pragmatic, practical point of view of sustainability. And then you can pick and choose the pieces that are going to break through and elevate your thinking and your brand to the consumer in a way that matters. I think what we're guilty of right now as a society is we've put in all our emphasis on marketing culture. And we've said, oh, check out my resort or my capsule or my one product that uses this much sustainable material. And it's more smoke and mirrors and marketing than it is real business plan, real structural change, real institutional shifts that drive long-term impact to the environment. So the latter is a much harder thing to do. I think we have to right balance that in the year to come. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's taught us that transparency is going to be really important. So I think for everyone on this call and everyone listening, I think our ability to be honest with each other about what are our intentions and how are we getting there. The worst thing we could do is come out of this and try and make a bunch of false claims and marketing campaigns that actually don't address the underlying issues. So that's not really a silver bullet of like this one technology is going to save us, but I think it starts with us as people and our behavior.
Transparency is definitely important. We have, I think we agree on that. So wrapping our conversation up, many thanks to all. And before I let you go and continue our remote and socially distant life, can I ask everyone to think of one word that you would like to symbolize next year? What would that one word be? And I'm gonna start with Gertjan.
Actions.
Actions, excellent. Adrian.
I'm gonna go with less.
Less. And Sara?
Awareness.
Less consumption.
Less consumption, much more action.
Less waste.
Excellent. Guys, thank you so much. This is amazing. Pleasure to see you guys.